I want to welcome
Hold on.
everybody. Hello, I want to welcome everybody that's going to be joining us here for this discussion. This is a very, very important discussion, and we are discussing now something that just cannot be ignored any longer, and that is the sudden death issue, where about 30% to 35% higher death rates than would be normally expected. I have people from three different locations: Ireland, England, and southern United States, Alabama. And we're going to compare and get their stories to see how this situation has developed. We are speaking to three morticians, and we're speaking to a lady here, Etna, who has been injured by the vaccine herself. And we're going to delve into this, and I'm going to give these people an opportunity to tell their stories. I'd also like them to compare their stories against the other stories by the other different locations and to see if there's trends here that jump out at us. And first of all, I'll welcome Etna and John O'Looney, John McGhee from Ireland, and Richard Hirshman down there in Alabama. Etna, we're going to start with you initially. Can you tell us, basically, your life now has been radically changed by taking the vaccine. And can you just tell us briefly how your life has been altered, but more importantly than that, what you see happening at the moment in Ireland in your area?
Well, my life certainly has been altered. Um, I almost met my maker. Um, I My husband thought I was dead on several occasions, and I saw his face when he shook me by the shoulders, and he thought that his face dropped. The shock on his face when he thought I hadn't made it. And when I spoke to him afterwards about that, um, he said to me that um, that has happened several times. We agreed. He's a very private man, and he agreed that on that it was okay for me to talk about. You know that was his experience, and it was okay about letting people know that that happened. And we agreed on the word several times. It wasn't a few times. It wasn't a lot of times. It was several times that he thought I was dead. So I was very close to not making it. Um, but I'd had a few, really serious incidents where I'd lost my sight. I'd had one particular occasion where um, I felt I was going across. Massive incidents like that. But then I went into a later stage where I was just deteriorating day by day by day by day. Massive inflammation, and I was literally, fading away. Really, the inflammation was so bad that I just couldn't function at any level, and the pain was horrendous. It was just, 10 out of 10 pain, the equivalent of, the intensity of late labor. So I don't really like looking back. I prefer to
Yes,
look
let's
forward.
move on from that. I just want to
Mm.
introduce that situation to the viewers in general. Now, let's begin with Ireland. I'd like to begin with the Irish situation because the Irish situation would have seen the highest percentage of people taking the vaccines.
Mm.
And we would want to figure out from John McGhee there, when he noticed a difference in his practice with an increased number of people being dealt with, and also with different aspects of their treatment, such as this clotting, etc., that had not been seen before. John, can you give us a little bit of a rundown of when you first noticed this change?
I first noticed a change in 2021, around March, springtime 2021. And at that point, I think the rollout had been in place for maybe 6 months, was it? It came out at the end of 2020. But I
2021.
did,
Yeah, 2020. So about 3 months.
okay, so that time that elapsed, into March, springtime 20 would be sufficient for the components of the injection to take hold and have those effects on the body, which manifested in sealant-like clots. They resemble silicone sealant, if you're familiar with that. I started seeing those in 2021, and I, I ignored it for a while until I heard of it's possibly John O'Looney talking about the same thing. And I said, right, I'm not imagining things. But there's nobody to speak out to, because where I live is I work six parts of six different counties within the Midlands, and specifically County Offaly, which I think is it was the second largest uptake in vaccinations in Ireland. And that aside from Ireland being a woke nation, wokery and government obedience goes hand in hand. So I would imagine we have an 85% vaccinated population. So yeah, then I just kept noticing, and eventually it just became numb to it then.
John,
Okay,
could I ask him a quick question there? What percentage of deceased are you embalming that are post-mortemed? And are you finding any clots in post-mortem cases that are released to you?
Well, you know yourself with PMs, you would have to sift through the bag of organs, the bag of viscera I don't have the time to do that when I'm going through sometimes up to 8 bodies a day. So I really don't have the time to do that. I will only observe it when it's in my injection site on a straight case.
Yes.
I'm not going to go rooting for them. I don't have that time to spare.
Okay.
So
now
I don't see them in autopsy cases.
for regular people, these are described as clots, but would it not be better to describe them as strands? It's actually not blood that is clotted. It seems to be, did you mention the word silicate there? It seems to be a fibrous material. When you remove those from the body, was there not some facility that you might have sent them away to have them seriously analyzed to figure out what the makeup of them was? Richard there is producing, showing them to us in the vials. And it's not blood that's clotted. It's actually something that's completely alien that you would not expect to find. John.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. I only got in touch with Richard earlier this year, and he has in turn put me in touch with a laboratory to which I can send my samples. Up to now, I didn't have that option. You get a few renegade scientists here in Ireland reaching out, but then that just falls by the wayside. They really don't have any recourse because the system, the powers that be, are not going to release that information to the likes of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Delkin,
So
I'd like to add in there. A lot of people have a misunderstanding. We are morticians. We are not investigators. We are not coroners. We do not determine the cause of death. And really, in where I'm at, the only time that I would notify a coroner would be if I saw somebody with a knife wound, maybe in their back, and they didn't see it. Then I would have an obligation to call for an investigation, or at least call the coroner. And I've only had to do that a couple of times in my career where I saw something that looked nefarious or something that I couldn't explain. It looked strange. And then I contact the coroner, and then they would come and look at it, or they would say, yeah, we've already noticed that and we've taken care of it. That's as far as it goes. As far as bringing this stuff to a laboratory, we don't have that kind of access, or at least I don't. I can't just take stuff like this and just send it off to a lab somewhere. I have to be willing, or I'd have to have a lab willing to look into it and investigate it. And there for the longest time, like John McGhee was saying, you're not going to get any of these people that are going to want to do it. They're going to be like, I'm sorry, we don't do that. You're not, are they going to say, are you a doctor? Are you with are you a clinic? Or are you with a school or something like that? Or what is your qualification that gives you the ability to send us this, to do these analysis? That's not going to happen for us. Nobody's going to want to look at it unless it's somebody that is curious and say, hey, I've seen you talk about this. Can you send me this stuff? I would like to look into it. And I've sent it off to several places. Most of them, like John McGhee say, they end up disappearing, and you never hear from them again. But there are some that have actually done some analysis, and that's led us to where we are today.
So you were coming across something that was highly unusual that you'd never seen before. You did as best you could to send it away to get it analyzed, and you were met with a wall of silence and ignoring, and they just didn't want to address it whatsoever. So you just ran against a dead end and you continued on doing as best you could your particular job.
Yes, I talked to I talked to a coroner who, again, this coroner is also a funeral director and embalmer licensed. He's been a coroner for a long time. He recognized that these are not normal. I mean, because he's been doing it for decades. He contacted the medical examiner. Okay, so he's a coroner. He's in a position where he can sit there and contact the medical examiner, which is above him. And it's like John O'Looney's scenario that he's talked about in the past. The medical examiner, which is where he would turn the bodies over to, they just said, "Oh, those are just post-mortem chicken fat clots." And he would say, and I was there when he was talking to him on the phone, and and he said, "Well, that's funny. How come, in the decades that I've been doing this, I've never seen this until recently, and you're trying to say that these are just typical, but it's."
Mm.
So what else can he do? He can't do anything further than that.
Has
Look,
this
this is not,
situation changed now? You mentioned there earlier that you were introduced to a lieutenant colonel that is trying to look into this and sort of break the wall of silence and speak out. And she, of course, would be at a much, much higher level up, interacting with the Department of Defense, etc. Can you just broach on that? And then we want to get back to John O'Looney to get his take on it from his perspective over there.
Well, yes. It was in January of 2022, a lieutenant colonel by the Lieutenant Colonel Teresa Long, who was the flight surgeon at Fort Rucker, Alabama. She was a DoD whistleblower talking about the DMED data that she was seeing. She ended up, from how I understand it, met one of the funeral directors that knows me, and when he found out who she was, he connected her and me. And then I was sharing with her some of the images of the stuff that I was seeing, which brought a lot of an alarm to her because of what she was seeing and hearing in the in the military stuff. Soldiers with clots radiating down their arms, unusual circumstances for healthy young adults with large, strange clots. So anyway, she's the one that basically realized that I'm looking at something that's highly unusual, and she put me in contact with Dr. Jane Ruby, and it was in January of 22 is when this went public. So I still can get in touch with her. She's now working, apparently, from what I understand, working with the government now outside of the Army, but as a with the new administration. So I know there are people in the new administration that know about this situation 100%. I mean, I've been in contact with these people. I've talked to people like RFK Jr. and so, and that was in early 22. So I know these people know about this. But it's continuing on. It hasn't changed. And again, Dr. Teresa Long, there's procedures that have to be played out. Like if it was one of her patients and she removes something like this from one of her patients as a surgeon or whatever, then she could do this. But for me to just simply pick up and send her a piece of whatever it is I have, she can't quite, I don't think she can quite go down that road to do any further analysis.
Okay, you mentioned JFK Jr. there. While you spoke to him there in 2022, of course, he would be just an activist and a
Yep.
prominent one. But now, of course, that he is the head of the department and a very, very powerful man, do you have faith in him proceeding and unearthing and getting to the bottom of this situation from start to finish?
Um, from start to finish, I can't say 100%. I do have confidence that he is doing what he can. But you got to understand the swamp runs really, really deep. And so he's got a lot of obstacles there. But if you just look at what's going on, I mean, I just saw last night a local news station talking about the new CDC guidelines, not recommending this shot for people. It is happening. It's taken an extreme amount of time. What I found interesting is the warp speed done under Donald Trump in his first run. What didn't they say it was like 9 months? They developed this vaccine in 9 months. That's what they said, warp speed, and it was supposedly great. Then, of course, they announced the vaccine after the 2020 election. And so then they spent the next 4 years mandating these things and hiding all of the injuries, like Aetna's injury and dozens and thousands of others. And people like Naomi Wolf, who sent off, she wrote this book called The Pfizer Documents, and all of this information is in there. She got FOIA information showing how the CDC and the FDA was getting reports in early as, I can't remember if it was April or May of 2021. We're talking, this is early on. And instead of exposing it, they hid it. And so for 4 years, we've had this, this wall we've been fighting against with the administration that was in charge. Now here we are, 9 months later. 9 months ago, Donald Trump ends up taking office, and here we are. The CDC is no longer recommending these shots for people under 65. It is turning around. It is happening, but it's at snail's pace, unfortunately. And what's really sad, though, Delkin, is for many people, it's too late. They want to blame people like John O'Looney, John McGhee, myself, Edna, and those people trying to sound the alarm. Wait just a minute. Before you blame us people for trying to sound the alarm, you need to blame the people who tried to prevent you from hearing the alarm.
Yeah.
Those people on
Okay,
Facebook.
let me just butt in there for a moment. So we'll synopsize the situation in the United States is that we're making slow but steady progress, and there's plenty of room for optimism. But now I want to swing back to the two Johns and then Etna to say maybe that things are not so optimistic in Ireland. So the question is, in Ireland and in England, is there anybody at all in a position that might just unearth what's going on here? We'll begin with John O'Looney in over in England.
Okay. So in my experience, I've tried to raise the alarm to the coroner with an email because I wanted the paper trail back in 2021. Now I've had a response, but only by telephone. I told them I wasn't happy with that, so I went to the Chief Coroner of England. No response at all. I sent another email 3 weeks later, and I CC'd in about 20 people into the email to put pressure on them to get a reply, and received a response that said, "We follow government policy. We don't make it." That's it. That was all. It was like the greatest admission without admitting anything at all. And this has carried on. The clots have become more common over time. The last 6, 7 months, I've been keeping a spreadsheet, and I'm very fortunate in the fact that I don't work on an industrial kind of scale. And I no disrespect, John, but you deal with a lot more deceased than I do. I do 2, 3, 4 funerals a week, so I have time to have a look. And there are a few glaring issues that have become very apparent in that spreadsheet. And remember, I've tried to keep it anonymous, and it transpires that 35% of all deceased that are coming in my care have these white clots in. And I'm finding them, these are all non-post-mortem cases, they're straight cases. And to embalm a straight case, you make an incision in the aorta, put an L-shaped nozzle in, strap it up to that artery and pump fluid around the body while you pull it off with a trocar, blood and body fluids, for want of a better word. Now, during that process, if you imagine when you're putting a hose down, you're putting pressure into what are very elastic still arteries and vessels and veins. So when you initially take that pump out, there's a little bit of back pressure. And that's what the spill is that's throwing this stuff all over the table. You'll see by the size of it, those in the trade will know where they've come from by the size of the artery. Now, 35% only in straight cases. Now, when you look at the amount of people who have been post-mortemed, perhaps 20%, perhaps 30%, it varies place to place. I cannot find a single shred of these clots inside any post-mortem case. And yes, we go through the viscera bag as well. All right. Now, so clearly they are clearing this out of people during the post-mortem process. And it sounds like a very complex operation. Trust me, the arterial system, the circulatory system is very basic. We all have the same sort of template. They've had 4 years to practice cleaning these deceased up before they then release them to me. Now, I had a woman recently, not that long ago, in her 30s, who died suddenly at a home address. Now, this happens now and again. As a funeral director, I'm called out predominantly out of hours. It's usually a residential address or a care home. Now, if it's a residential address, usually it would be someone who had gone home to die, a terminal cancer patient, and unfortunately that happens even more so now since the vaccine rollout. But this woman didn't have anything wrong with her at all. She just, no comorbidities, just killed over, dead, face down in her own front room. And then I was called. Now, that isn't the normal process. Usually, wherever there's a sudden death, the coroner's crew would come in, they'd collect that deceased and convey that deceased from the scene of that death, which is a potential crime scene, straight to the coroner for ascertaining and whatnot. But I found the last 6 months, we keep getting called out to sudden deaths, okay, which isn't on our remit. So I complained to the coroner. I said, listen, I've been out and picked up a woman in her 30s who was face down in the living room, no comorbidities. This isn't the first time. Why is this happening again and again and again? And not loads of times, maybe 8 times since Christmas. That's 8 times too many, you know? So anyway, I received a very honest reply from the coroner, and she told me the following, that in September of last year, in 2024, the government in the UK issued a new directive surrounding sudden deaths, a new operational procedure. And that procedure involves the officers in attendance who are called to that to make the call on whether to refer to the coroner themselves. So I kind of looked at the email and in disbelief, because I've met many police officers. I worked for the coroner for 7 years. And in that 7 years, I attended hundreds of sudden deaths, not tens, hundreds. So I'm quite into the scenes of crime, and you know, I've got eyes and a critical thinking brain. And I can tell you, I've yet to meet a police officer with a doctorate in pathology and X-ray vision that is qualified to make that call to say there is no need to look at someone in their 30s who's collapsed and died suddenly in their own front room. But that's what they did.
Let's jump to John McGhee there to see if the situation in Ireland is similar, that there's a huge increase in sudden deaths. But in the earlier part of your paragraphs there, you mentioned or suggested, if I'm understanding it correctly, that bodies were delivered to you, and to make it a simplified term, there might have been a cover-up already taken place in that body, where they had been pumped out.
Yeah, they're cleaning the clots out during the post-mortem process. How do I know this? So this 30-something woman that came to me, I made a complaint. They then picked her up on the Monday and took her to the coroner because I'd complained. Now, when they returned the deceased to me, it had a full post-mortem, and we undid the stitching, took the sternum out, took the bag of viscera out, and you're looking at an empty body cavity. And at the hips, there's the lowest point in that cavity where blood pools, and that pool is probably 10, 15 mil deep. And when he's cleaned that pool of blood out, there's a huge lump of white clot, the perfect cast of a major artery, but dropped in there. So what they're doing is they're clearing it all out, and they've accidentally dropped a bit back in the body cavity, and they've looked and they can't see it because it's covered in blood. So that is clear evidence of them cleaning those deceased out. And purely the fact that if I'm finding 35% of all straight cases have it, why am I finding none at all in any post-mortem case? It's clear what they're doing. And I've challenged them and they can't talk to me about it. So that then brings the number up to about 55%. And then you think, well, how many are vaccinated? I really don't know.
Okay, that's very, very important to stress there that they are now tampering with the bodies. So, as a person in your position will not see these events that are unexplainable or might point
Yeah.
to
They're doing
diseased
it in every
body.
area as well. So I'm picking up people from different parts of the country and they've cleaned them out in exactly the same way. Sometimes they've done it very strangely, very differently, where they'll leave the viscera intact and just take the heart and lungs. But then you go in and they've snipped the ephemeral artery and pulled and cleaned it out and then tucked it all back over because they don't think that you're going to look, you know?
Let's jump over to John McGhee, but it's fascinating because these people are doing that. They're being told to do that by somebody higher up on the
Yes, of course.
scale, of course. John McGhee, does that mesh in well with your experiences as well?
Yeah, like John was asking me earlier on if I noticed the difference between autopsied bodies and straight ones in so far as finding clots. Like I said, I don't always have time to look through the bag of organs, but when I have, I haven't noticed any clots. So yeah, it's plausible that they would have been taken out. But they also any anomalies in the body, the pathologist will remove for further analysis. But we've never heard the results. We've never heard these new anomalies released. You know, the findings released to us as you would with other cases. You get the backstory on a body further down the line if you're a regular with a certain undertaker, and you never hear the results of the suddenlies and unexpectedlies now. You know, you'll get if it was a stroke or a heart attack, you'll get feedback on that further down the line. You know, so yeah, it does seem like it's been covered up.
Let's jump back there to Etna because Etna was trying to make a point there, and to keep it flowing, I just held her back for a while. Etna, what point were you wishing to make there a few moments ago?
Well, it's more about what way I am with my treatment. You know, I was in dire straits, you know, earlier on in my illness, and when I became friends with Richard and John O'Looney and myself had a talk early on when all this stuff was going on. We didn't record it or anything. We just spoke, and I was hoping to try and reach people, you know, to give a warning, I suppose, as well, was my primary thought, you know, to try and get the warning out because people weren't being told that this injection was so dangerous. And my instinct when I realized how sick I was to get the word out to people, to other people. Don't put yourself in my situation, you know. And I knew people were dying. So my instinct was to try and not to go out there telling people don't get injected, but to tell them that there's another side to this, because I wasn't given the information that I should have been given. When I went to the vaccination center, I looked for information. I spoke to a pharmacist when I was there. You know, I looked online. I didn't find the information that I needed. I spoke to my GP. She said, we don't have guidance on it. I went to the vaccination center. I spoke to two nurses there. They weren't able to give me the information that I needed. They called a pharmacist, and I was told a pack of lies. I was not given the information that I needed. They only spoke about anaphylaxis. They told me to stay for 30 minutes instead of 15. And they had frightened the living bejesus out of me by the lies they told on the TV and so on. So I was scared of COVID. I thought there was something to be afraid of. So anyway, I ended up putting the arm out because I was frightened into it. And I was assured in a way that was not true. So I did get extremely ill. I'm a very sensitive body. So I reacted to the bloody thing and it nearly killed me. And the only reason I'm still alive is because I knew enough about the human body that I was able to find things that kept me alive. And I'm very lucky that I was able to do that, because most people wouldn't know the things that I know. I was working with health for 25 years. So I was able to find the things that I needed to keep myself alive. And I have a fairly good handle on what I need now to stay alive. And I could be sharing that with people to help them to stay alive. But recently I saw a doctor who is the expert on vaccine injury. And the report that I got in the post this morning or yesterday morning, in the report it says that I have long COVID, and that is a lie. That is misinformation. And I'm not very happy about that, and I will be challenging that. It is basically not true that I have long COVID. And that I have the piece of paper in front of me. She was infected in 2021. Infected. So it is saying that I was infected by COVID and that I have long COVID. It doesn't mention anything about vaccine injuries. So I won't be tolerating that. I will be challenging that. But leaving that aside, the doctor in question gave me one drug, which is very, very good and it has helped me. So it's something that is making life a little bit easier for me, and that's very good. And it's low dose naltrexone. That's very good. But he then gave me something that made me very, very ill. So I'm questioning whether the treatment plan is meant to make you well at all. And when I've challenged the person about that, I didn't get any answers, you know. So I'm wondering why doctors won't speak to somebody who is willing to be a guinea pig and say, you know, I could show you a person. I've studied vaccine injury. When I say studied myself, I've researched it and I've looked at a thing called Vexus. Since Vexus is primarily, there's no other reason for Vexus except this particular injection, the COVID-19 vaccination. It comes from that and no other source. And I do believe I've that, but I can't find anybody that'll do the test for it. Found one doctor who was willing.
It's all about money. It's all about money.
Okay, let me put in there, John, first, and get back to you.
Yeah, so I know a lot
take,
about this illness, and I believe I do have that, and it's a massive inflammation of the bone marrow, and its mortality is extremely high with this illness, and if you don't get the inflammation down very quickly, the person will die from it. And I do believe that that's what I have, an inflammatory disorder. But if you put anything that pushes the immune system in, the person dies from it, you know. And this doctor is suggesting I put in things that push my immune system up. By giving me something that pulls the immune system down, he's also giving me things to push the immune system up, which actually is the opposite thing to making the person well. And has also given me a letter to say that I have not got a vaccine injury, that I have long COVID. You know?
So are you on record as having had COVID?
Sorry.
Are you on record? Yeah.
Taken from what you have said there, Etna, this doctor is going beating around the bush, and he will do everything but admit. He wants you to believe, and he more importantly wants everybody else to believe that you have got something called long COVID, even though you know it's something different.
I was dying of vaccine injury before I got COVID, and I only got myself tested so that I could get a pass so I could go out for a meal.
But the bottom line is they cannot admit to the public that your injuries is a result of the vaccine. Instead, they insist that it is something different called long COVID, because if they are sued as they will be.
But Declan, I've already got a case ongoing.
Yes, beautiful. But they want to fight that. They want to say that you have long COVID. And that goes to what John O'Looney, and we're going to get onto John now, O'Looney. If they admit to it being their fault, they will result in massive legal cases against them. John, what do you see, John O'Looney, what do you see as the financial impact should they be forced to admit that the vaccine actually causes these injuries? Now,
well, it would. I think ultimately we know that it would end them globally, because there'll be different structures of compensation across the world. We saw it here many years ago with something called thalidomide. It was a morning sickness drug, and all the women were having disabled babies with limbs missing. It took them 30 years before the truth came out. And the truth is much like a football and holding that football underwater in a swimming pool. You can do it. You can suppress it. It takes a lot of effort and resources, but you can hide it. But eventually, that football has got to come to the surface, and that's what's going to happen with this truth. So I think the best pointer for when they admit that will be the moment the money changes hands and somebody sells and buys big shares in it because they know it's just about to crumble. You know, so there's the little precursor. And I was told, I was at a meeting with a really quite well-connected guy a couple of weeks ago, former MP, and he said that he expects a large-scale disclosure in October on the vaccines. We'll see, won't we? We'll see. But the reality is, if they did that, what would be the end result? Financial devastation, which is what they want. And there would be large-scale civil unrest, which is what they want. So I don't know which way it's going to go, but I know the truth is going to come out. It's already out. It's going to come. It's going to become globally recognised, and I suspect it'll be on the back of disclosure.
Ireland is a very litigious country, and people like to have claims and they have tribunals. So, John McGhee, do you see? I know Etna says she had a case, but do you see the situation arising where absolutely untold numbers of people? We've seen it with people injured with too loud rifles in the armed forces. Ireland is a place that everybody will be sowing, and as John O'Looney replied to it there. That'd be just devastation. It would sink the system.
Well, you know how much the Irish are willing to withstand before they would buckle. They're watching the whole country being torn asunder in front of them, and they're still saying it's grand, it's okay. The poor refugees, all this bullshit. So they're going to be the same with the vaccines. They'll be very reluctant to sue. They also they went around with that campaign after they got vaccinated to say, I received my COVID-19 vaccine, really proud of it. So do you really see them reneging on that? They have such pride in their bad decisions that they couldn't be seen to be wrong. That's just what I see on the ground here. I don't see any acknowledgement of the mass devastation the rollout has caused.
That is an excellent point there. Human nature suggests that the most difficult thing for most people to do is actually admit that they made a mistake. And you are correct, John McGhee, there. They have now bought into this narrative, hook, line, and sinker, to such an extent that they would sell their granny, and even more importantly, they may not even bring cases because to bring the case, they'd have to admit that they have been suckered. And that is a very good point, John McGhee, indeed.
The only thing,
Jumping over to, go ahead, Edna.
The only thing about it is you must take a case. The vaccine cases have to be taken within the first 2 to 3 years. So the cases are all well and truly done. You know, they were finished a couple of years ago. You know, you can't take a case against the vaccines. You know, they were done ages ago.
Okay, so that window has closed.
Oh, yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. What I would say as well is talking about vaccines, I mean, the autism cases are going to be horrendous because that's starting to come out, you know. The truth is coming out about autism, and that's heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. I'm dreading that.
That will give us an opportunity to jump back there at Richard, who mentioned JFK. JFK Jr. made his name on the autism and the what we call the old vaccines issue. How do you see things working out with regards to that, Richard?
It's RFK Jr., just to be clear.
Yeah. Sorry, I get my FKs confused.
Yeah, how do I see...
Poor JFK Jr. went into the water off Martha's Vineyard, unfortunately. Go ahead, Richard.
So how do I see this moving forward? Is this going to be really, really tough? I, in a sense, can see the Great Reset playing out as everything crumbles around. And I agree with John McGhee. There's a lot of people, they just don't want the war. They don't want the chaos. They don't want to admit they were wrong. They're too proud of what they've done. And so some of them are going to be in shame and are not wanting to get up and fight against this as the truth comes out.
Mm.
The thing with truth is I agree 100% with John O'Looney. It's like holding a football under the water out there in the middle of the ocean. You can hold that thing underwater, but eventually it's got to come to the surface. Or actually, it's the air that has to come to the surface, right? So part of me is wondering if what the governments are going to do, and which is what they've been doing for a long time, is they're letting the air out of the football a little at a time, and a little bit of bubble, a little bit of bubble, a little bit of bubble. And eventually you can keep that football from coming to the surface if you slowly do it. But by the time that all of the air is out of there and there's now water in that thing, it's going to sink. But again, the truth is that which does not change. So how we're going to react in the future, I'm not 100% sure. I would have thought there would have been an uproar by now, long before now. I'm shocked because I've seen groups where we've asked large groups of people, and I've seen other people do this, where they ask the crowd in front of them, how many people know somebody or you yourself has been vaccine injured? And when you got 80% of the people in your group raising their hand, then the idea of vaccine injuries are rare is out the window. You don't get 80% of the room raising their hands. So I mean, we're slowly succumbing to this. We know I know what these particular clots, like this clot right here that I'm holding in my hand, came out of the iliac artery going up towards the heart. Now, to give you an idea, look at the length of that. There it is. That's 19 inches. That's the length of my arm. And it came out of the iliac artery just like this. And I had to pull it out like this. That's how it came out. Prior to embalming, so nobody that can sit there and say that the formaldehyde caused the clot, because formaldehyde hadn't even touched the body yet. So these are, because we've now have actual analysis of what these things are. They are misfolded fibrinogen. They are amyloid misfolded fibrinogen. And the normal clotting mechanism is alpha, beta, gamma chains of fibrinogen. And typically they're a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. In other words, there's equal parts of the alpha fibrinogen, the beta fibrinogen, and the gamma. What we have here is like 9 parts of beta, 4 parts of gamma, and only 1 part of alpha chain, which means this is an aberrant, misfolded bunch of mess. And so what I think we're looking at is a type of an amyloidosis of the blood. And amyloid is very similar to prion. Not all amyloids are prion, but all prions are amyloid, misfolded proteins. So we know what these things are. And unfortunately, with misfolded fibrinogen, and Aetna talks about how she mentioned in the bone marrow. Well, the bone marrow is where you're producing your blood cells and all this other stuff. So your body's constantly pumping out different things. If you've infected the blood of the people where these amyloids end up, if they end up in the heart, you're going to end up with heart issues. If they're going to end up in the brain, you're going to have strokes, or you can have dementia. Wherever they start to accumulate in the body is going to cause a variety of health issues. And we only know this because of the works of people like Kevin McCairn. We know the works of, I've worked with gentlemen. I know Aetna hasn't talked to these people yet, but Greg Harrison in Australia. And I mean, we've talked to other things in this book. I mean, the first time I met John, I think is the first time I ever got to say hello to John, was shortly after I spoke publicly. We were on a call with Sukrit Bhakti and Arnie Burkhart and the what was that group called, John? Do you remember that? The COVID
There've been so many, mate, haven't there?
anyway, but you know, there were major scientists on there, and they were trying to tell me,
Medical doctors for COVID ethics, was it?
Possibly. That was
I
one.
think
That
that's
was one.
right.
Yeah.
I think that might have been it. They were trying to tell me, one of the doctors on there was trying to say he believed that these have to be post-mortem. But unfortunately, we've had family members now talk about their loved one having surgery prior to their death, where they pulled out white fibrous clots. You can't get a white fibrous clot that's post-mortem out of a living person. It doesn't work that way. If these were post-mortem, they would only form after death.
A lot
So
of the vaccine injured are getting white matter on their brain from their MRI brain scans,
and
MRIs.
that sounds like what they're detecting is amyloid deposits in the brain, which is like scar tissue almost.
Right.
I think John McGhee, I mean, I never heard of anybody say silicone-like sealant for these things, but it's true. If you look at the silicone on the edge of your window or your bathtub and you peeled it off, that is kind of what it looks like.
I think we can all agree then that those people did not die of natural causes. So if they did not die of natural causes, they died of unnatural causes. Unnatural causes mean somebody actually killed them. So is there an agenda out there of deliberate death, or is there a sort of accidental situation that developed where all these people are dying? Because we all agree that people are dying. And also, not only are we talking about the clots, but we're talking about the sudden upsurge of rapidly advancing cancers called turbo cancers. I encountered somebody recently that died 4 days after the cancer was diagnosed. It's just something that's impossible to happen under normal circumstances. Edna, can you jump in there on that issue? And I would like to get everybody's opinion on that one. We're just going to focus on the cancers, and then we're going to look into the future and delve into perhaps John McGhee has some interesting insights as to what is the game plan or what is the end game.
One of the things I'd say, well, it's kind of related to the cancer, but I think something that I wish we could do something about, and that is some of the healing things that we have, like mushrooms. I at one point I had such trouble with my brain, the inflammation that I had. The main problem that I have is inflammation. My whole body becomes inflamed, and if you look at Vexus, although my heart and lungs aren't affected, I believe the inflammation comes from my bone marrow, and my whole body becomes inflamed, and my brain becomes so inflamed that the dura, which is the membrane that holds the fluid around your brain and your spinal cord, became the pressure around my brain was 10 out of 10 pain, like the equivalent intensity of late labor, and the pain was 24-hour. Like it would be not surges of pain. It was constant 24-hour without any break or surges or relief or anything. Solid 24-hour, not even down to a 9 at any point. 24-hour, and then you might get an hour or two off, and then it'll be back up to 10 out of 10. And at one point I thought the only way this can stop is if I die, because it went on and on and on and on, days and weeks. It's just unbelievable pain. You couldn't describe it. And then a massive bang, like a balloon, and it was the dura bursting because I got fluid into my mouth. So the membrane around my brain and my spinal cord ruptured. But I had the most pressure on my neck, so it obviously burst at my neck. It wasn't up high, because that's the weakest point if you think of it. That it burst. So it still regularly ruptures, but it's not the big bang that it used to be, that it was that one time. And I can taste the salty, metallic-y taste of the fluid coming into my mouth. But at least, the pressure cooker now is cap isn't so tight. So it releases on a regular basis. So I don't have to go to that intense pain. But my inflammation is my main problem, and I have to keep that inflammation down. Going into that story is it has distracted me away from what I wanted to say.
Well, thank goodness the
oh
pain
yes,
is not as bad.
mushrooms.
Yes, the
Mushrooms.
mushrooms.
Sorry, mushrooms. My brain became like damaged from all of this intensity and this pain, and I was getting, on a daily basis, I was getting these brain crashes, I called them. So I would lose my ability to think, and I would lose my ability to speak. And if somebody asked me questions or whatever, I was just gone, and I looked like I was having a stroke. If I went out by myself and somebody said to me, yeah, in a shop, it happened to me one day in the shop in Crete, and the woman started asking me questions, and I just went completely. So I was, and eventually I was gone completely. I couldn't say anything, and she was panicking. Ring an ambulance, and I couldn't say to her, "Don't ring an ambulance," because I couldn't speak. I was, no. This kind of minutes, trying to say, "Leave me for 10 minutes to rest, and I'll be okay then." So that's what's happened to me every single day. And I got onto good quality lion's mane mushrooms. There's one farm in Ireland, and I'll give them a shout out on this because they're very good. Gaelic Fungi Farms, and they grow really good, high quality lion's mane mushrooms, and that cleared it completely. Vaccine injured people. There's a peer-reviewed study on this that they are lacking completely in one antibody in the brain, and they have a glut of a different antibody. And I have a YouTube video done on this, and I have the link to the study in that as well. And I wouldn't have been able to do this if before I started on the mushrooms. But the EU have made turkey tail mushroom a novel food, which means you cannot buy it, you cannot sell it in Ireland. And turkey tail mushroom breaks down cancer cells, the evil bastards. So you can't get turkey tail mushroom. Now, I do know somebody that grows it and to a very high quality, and he is very kind in getting it to people that have cancer. And he does that in Northern Ireland, so he's not covered by the EU anyway. But they have done that to people here, and I know somebody that was growing it here, and they were doing it as a, they were saying, if you make a donation to my farm, I will give you a gift of this. And the HSE came after them, and they tortured them, and they were going to close them down and destroy their business and everything, and they have to stop. And that's what the EU are doing to people with cancer in Ireland. So it's evil. It's absolutely evil. But it genuinely, like the way the lion's mane has, now my brain is not as it was, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was a year or two ago. And so we have things that we can use to help us to improve, but the HSE are our enemies in this, in our fight to get well. The EU and the HSE are our enemies in this. So
that is very interesting. That is very interesting. You should say that, Edna, because I believe about 10 years ago they brought in some law or directive from the EU, alimentarius something. It's a Latin phrase, but basically what it was make outlawing all different brands of natural food like those mushrooms, etc. So as regular people just cannot get them anymore,
yeah,
and that
novel food.
is part of an agenda indeed.
Yeah,
I'm waiting to bring in
true.
John McGhee there to see what does he think, and we want to really discuss what is the game plan behind these people that are trying to do this, like bringing in, like making that vital life-saving, in your case and everybody else's case as well, that particular brand of mushroom, they
Yeah.
want to make it an illegal drug.
They're after lion's mane next. They're coming after lion's mane next, and I don't know what that will do to me if they cut off that supply to me.
What do you think of
Yeah,
that,
I know
John
they're after.
McGhee, what you've heard so far?
Oh yeah, it's the HPRA, the Health Products Regulatory Authority in Ireland. That they are responsible for that, along with the HSE. They go into health food shops and make sure they're not stocking anything that really could compete with big pharma. So they already several years ago they banned the antidepressant, the natural antidepressant St. John's wort, which is available on a lot of Irish land, because it was in direct competition with big pharma
Mm.
antidepressants. Only recently they banned the apricot kernels, which are, I believe, they are helpful in the fight against cancer. So
That's
yeah, they
evil.
just want they want big pharma um to rule everything. And well,
Mm.
you know the end when you're pumped up with chemotherapy drugs, it ends up doing more harm than good, and
Yeah,
take
and,
away the
yeah, and
alternatives
I was very
because a patient.
disappointed that I shared the petition for the turkey tail mushroom, to a petition to against the HSE, for them to, you know, to lift the ban, and there was only 250 people signed it. I was very
Remember,
disappointed.
remember,
Yeah,
a patient cured is a client lost. You're worth more sick.
yeah. But the people of Ireland didn't even sign the petition, and I shared it 3 or 4 times, and hardly anybody signed it. You know, Irish people can be very apathetic at times. You
It's
know.
not, it's not just the Irish people there, because I believe Richard earlier on, a half an hour ago, whatever, was saying that the people down there in southern the United States, which are more prone to be active than they would be up in this side either, they just don't seem to want to know about these things at all. They just want to go about what is the old story? An inconvenient truth is much better than an uninconvenient, or whatever. Convenient in untruth is better than an inconvenient lie, or whatever it is. They just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, keyboard warriors.
Well,
People want to live
perhaps.
their
So
life. They're it's they're slowly.
They're happy with their
They're,
bread and circuses now, and they don't want that interrupted or taken away from them.
yeah, don't beat me any harder. I'll submit. Just stop the beatings, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. Just,
yeah,
you know, you
worrying.
want to know what the goal is. I mean, I didn't want to believe. I wanted to believe that this was a medical mistake. I really did. I didn't want to believe in a an agenda for global depopulation.
Look at the timing of it.
However, what's that?
Sorry, Richard, continue. I cut across you there.
Yeah, so if you look at a lot of what's been going on in the world, you create the crisis, create fear and panic, and when the people are so upset, what does almost all of us want? I mean, everybody demand that the government come in and fix it. But what if it's the government that's created the crisis, and now you're demanding more and more power? You're giving them more and more power. But the more power we give our governments, the less power we have for ourselves. It falls in line with the Great Reset and the one world order. They've been wanting this. This is a spiritual war between good and evil. It's in all of the old cartoons. I'm going to be the ruler of the world. You have these group of people that think they're doing the right thing, and they want global dominance. And how they do this, like the book 1984, you create enemies, you have your moments of violence and rage and all this other stuff, and you promote all of that. And then as long as you're behaving yourself and you're doing your duties, then we're going to give you your loaf of bread and your pound of meat. And as soon as you stop going away from that, we're going to go ahead and start pulling these things away. And then you don't want to starve to death, so you go back to doing what they tell you to do. I mean, it's
Mm.
it's classic. I mean, I'm a Bible believing person. I believe we're basically living the
Nice.
the book of tribulations. I mean, This is over and over again with the digital IDs and all this other stuff. Man, can we
Mark of
not
the beast.
see it? The mark of
It's
the beast is coming. And we're not
tying
going to stop it.
it's tying in with that part of the Bible that says the stranger in your country will rule over you, and you'll be secondary to it. And that's all in time. That's look at the timing of the rollout of the depopulation injection, right on time with the mass invasion of nation states with a demographic that's completely alien, and also a demographic that is largely unjabbed.
Would you all four agree that in the near future, the plan is to introduce serious social chaos? We're beginning to see parts of it now with regards to these deportations up here in the United States. ICE, the immigration people, just a few days ago were surrounded by a mob in Chicago, and one lady had a rifle and she fired a few shots and they fired back or whatever. But the important thing of the whole story is the ICE federal agents radioed and requested the local Chicago Police Department to come to their assistance, which is normal and it's obvious that a police officer will help another police officer regardless of whether he's from a different department or not. But the mayor and the chief of police issued an order for the Chicago police to stand down and not interfere, perhaps in the hope that many people would be killed in a firefight between the ICE agents and the protesters. Is this about to kick off in you've from reporting from three different countries? But John O'Looney, perhaps over there in Britain, I think society is closer to a breaking point than perhaps in Ireland and the United States. What do you see happening as soon as a bit of economic trials will begin and people will be running out of money and whatnot? Is
Well,
Britain on the
inevitably,
verge?
yeah, of course it's on the verge, but that's clearly it's by design, isn't it? They work on a
Yes.
problem solution basis. They create the problem to deliberately then offer the solution that people are clamoring for. Here in the UK, they're flooding the country with young men of fighting age, of a military age. They're putting them all over the country. They're housing them, they're keeping them. These people are running riot. They're doing pretty much whatever they want. And it's very clear the agenda that's going on, which is Agenda 2030. And it was Agenda 2030 was, adopted in 2015 by 193 UN member states. So it's quite obvious to me that they're not going to back out. They're deeply entrenched in it now. Now, in September of 2021, I went to a meeting in Westminster. There were around about 18 people that attended. One of them, who was chairing the meeting, was a man called Sir Graham Brady. Now, Sir Graham was the commissioner of the 1922 committee, a very influential man, two pay grades over the Prime Minister, which surprised even me. But the way it works is the 1922 committee hire and fire prime ministers, so they are a pay grade above. He was the commissioner of that commission, so he's two pay grades above. And amongst these people were Professor Dolores Cale, Dr. Tess Laurie, Dr. Sukrit Bhakdi, Anna de Bisseret, God bless her soul, Philip Hyland, a barrister called, I can't remember, Francis Hoare, and Mark Sexton, the retired police constable. And we all had 5 minutes because the minister's time is precious, we were told. And so I said my bit. What I knew up to that point was they were faking COVID deaths and people only really died when the needle went in. And then it went round the table. And I listened as these experts in their field were describing in great detail how people were going to die. They described the cancers, the blood clots, the heart attacks, and reams of evidence went down to Sir Graham. Now, I'm a man of the people. I study people all my life, and I'm very good with body language. And whilst it went round the table, we were hearing this continual horror story, and it was. And I was watching Sir Graham because his reaction was actually quite forthcoming, because it told me. And I can tell you, that's a man that totally knew what the plan was. And he openly admitted that it was way, way above his pay grade. And he's two pay grades above the Prime Minister. So clearly, we all sat there and we were, well, who runs things then? Clearly it isn't the government. They're just installed puppets. So venting at your government is a total waste of time, because if you manage to depose them, they have another World Economic Forum young hopeful in the waiting, who can't wait. It's a deliberate act. It is genocide. And Sir Graham, it was put at the end of the meeting to Sir Graham, that when people find out what's been done, that you sterilized them and killed them off and poisoned them and maimed them and hurt them on the back of a lie, there will be civil unwar. There'll be civil unrest. There'll be civil war. That's the reality. And he acknowledged that. And he said, yes, they know, and they're preparing. How are they preparing? Shiny new prisons everywhere. The infrastructure to have a total, totally observed police state, and the invitation of thousands of young men of fighting age. Now, these young men come across in rubber boats. They're guided in by our own Coast Guard and our own lifeboats, and they're processed through the Home Office. And the boats are taken into the Home Office compound, and then those boats are loaded onto 2 lorries. They take the outboard motors off and they strap them to pallets, and they go on 1 lorry, and the boats go on another lorry. And this has been filmed. I have footage of it, and they go back to France, so the boats are reused. So it's clearly a deliberate act at a time when they are killing off our young men with poisonous injections. So it's clear very much that there is certainly a replacement going on, that they are very aware. And it will only ever get much darker, I believe, until we get the numbers behind us to force their hand. It's going to be, it's a very, very interesting time to live, isn't it? But when you know what's going on, it's actually quite, really, really upsetting when you understand the gravity of the situation. And I've had 4 years, 5 years now to come to terms with it. And I've laid down, I've cried my heart out, but I've come to the conclusion that I'm never going to get anywhere crying my heart out, wishing it would go away. You've got to get out there and you've got to make a difference. How can we make a difference? By waking the masses up. And then there's nothing these people can do, because that's what they fear most, is our numbers. And once the numbers realise, if everyone realised they have a common enemy and who that enemy was, it'll be over very quickly. And it is a spiritual war. It is, I believe, at the core of it, the Satanists that run this place. And it saddens me greatly. So I'm just trying to do my part, I guess, to make a difference.
John, what you seem to describe there, I might refer to that as a soft kill, where people are being killed by medicines, deprivation,
Yes.
despair,
Yes.
suicide,
Yep.
lack of opportunities.
Well, you've only got to look,
and
haven't you? We've got full-term abortions here now, and we've
yes, from
also got
both ends.
assisted suicide. So you can go to a hospital, they won't even consult your family. They'll have a sit-down chat with you, and they'll bump you off. That's in a hospital, in an NHS hospital, full-term babies. And then I'm told the parts of those babies are auctioned off to the highest bidder.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because
It's totally satanic. We are living under Satanists, but people, if you declare that, people won't believe it. So you have to just plant the seeds and then let it watch and slowly unfold. And they will see it in the end. They will see the truth, and the truth will set us all free. It will come at great cost, but it already has, because there's not bullets flying everywhere. People can't see there's a war on, but they will.
So it would be a soft war, and I'm glad you just mentioned abortion there, but I'd also put in the effect of death by that drug they give them, euthanasia, etc. That is
Yes.
also at the end of it. So that would be a soft kill. But when you were describing the people coming in, you described them as military age, physically strong, fighting men. Does
Yes.
that not seem to imply that perhaps a hard kill is soon to follow the
Well,
soft kill?
it certainly will follow a soft kill, I suspect. And the way it's going to play out is this. They've ushered in the WHO pandemic treaty that nobody asked for. This was done without any running it past the British people. And what that will mean is, and Bill Gates has already said, hasn't he, with great gusto, there's another one coming, you'll take notice of this one. And so what they're going to do is, at some point, they're going to announce another pandemic. And then the puppet politicians can all scuttle off to their bunkers, because the WHO
So what you're saying, the plan is that when there is the next outbreak of a pandemic or a natural
No, they're
disaster
going
of
to
any
declare
sort
one.
whatsoever,
Yeah, they're going to
when
declare a
they when
pandemic.
when they declare one, the WHO, which is the World Health Association, they will actually be given
Organization.
full
Yes,
control,
full
and you are
sovereignty.
also pointing out that their army is already in placed,
Yes.
implanted, embedded
Yeah,
at
they just
our
haven't got the uniform
expense
on. Yeah.
in every village and town in England,
Yes.
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland,
Yes. And I can tell you
in a
these are
nutshell.
military
And
men. They've been
that
trained
is
in
the
the
future
Ukraine.
that you see.
Yes, they've been trained in the east of Ukraine and Antalya. And one of the regiments that trained them was the Black Watch. And I've liaised with Black Watch members who've told me all about it.
And that is the only rational explanation as to what has been seen in your viewpoint.
Well, that is based on fact. I mean, it's quite
Yes.
obvious that our government is facilitating this. They're giving them driving lessons, prepaid credit cards, mobile phones, board and lodging, clothing. Those are not benefits for refugees. Those are rewards for paid employees. These are army recruits. That's the reality.
So, John McGhee, as if some strange miracle, do you see the exact same thing happening in Ireland? It could not be a coincidence. And you would be
The,
then of the same opinion.
it's an almost carbon copy of what's happening in the UK, maybe to a greater scale given our smaller population. Every small town in Ireland has an almost military barracks-like setup with regard to the housing of these so-called refugees who come without women and children. You already know this, but every small town you can think of has an outpost, like which resembles a military barracks of old, except none of the personnel are of this nation. So yeah, they must be waiting for the go-ahead or for deployment. They're already causing problems. There's several women are being stalked in those respective towns, being raped. Children's playgrounds are being frequented by these so-called gentlemen. Yeah, so I think they're just waiting on the go-ahead. What other reason could they be here?
No other reason whatsoever. Absolutely zero reason. Richard,
Very
things are a little bit different down in Alabama. We do have the Second Amendment, and we do have men down there that are willing to step forward to the plate. And indeed, there's ladies down there willing to step forward to the plate as well. I've dealt with a lot of Christian ladies, and let it be. I once asked them, if the order comes to give up their weapons, will they obey the order? And the lady says to me, she said to me, no, Christians will fight. And that was the best thing I had heard that day. How do you see things developing down uh, down in the South?
Well, America, you're here in America. You see a lot of Americans are just nice people. I mean, just like they are in the UK and in Ireland. I mean, we're just people. But you've seen the open borders here in this country and all of the chaos. You're not that far back. We had the George Floyd riots. All this is just about division, division, division. And one side wants to sit there and break things apart while the other one comes in and supposedly is going to save the day. And you've seen recently how ICE, which is, the immigration people that want to come in and try to clean this mess up. And then they create the chaos. You get some mess over there, and you've got politicians that are not helping out the federal agents, and it creates this division. I see what's going to play out. It's going to be a little bit different. I think the United States is going to be so many times in our history, most of the war has been fought outside of our borders, and I can almost see, if we're not careful, they'll be right here in our borders. And we've got a lot of people in our country that are here illegally, and they're not wanting to leave, and they're not wanting to go. But you create the problem. Think about, I mean, I can't imagine, like 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of having military type soldiers on the streets of our cities going around and gathering people up. Now, I get it. On one hand, you say, well, if the local officers aren't doing their job, you're going to be forced to send the military in there to create order. Well, doesn't that fit into the exact same thing that John O'Looney and John McGhee's talking about? You're basically giving a thing, allow the government to come in with force, which is going to be interesting because this all plays into the world, one world type order. But who's going to be in charge of that one world order? Is it going to be the United States? Is it going to be the EU? Is it going to be China? Is it going to be Russia? A part of me feels like all this is just causing us to go and fighting each other. Again, spiritually, Jesus told us to love our neighbor. Love God, love our neighbor. On one hand, I want to say, as a Christian, as a believer, that we're supposed to react in love, not in hate and not in violence. But at the same time, I have an obligation and a right to defend my family. So if you want to come over here, and if you got some thugs or whatever, they're going to come in here and they're going to try to shoot up my house. Well, and I have a right to shoot back. But when it comes to the government coming in here to do this, a part of me is like, if the government comes up with all of their black SUVs, I'm not going to fight. What's the point? It's the government. I'm going to sit there and fight the government. I don't necessarily see that happening, but you get enough violence going on in the cities of Chicago and all these other places, it's setting the stage for a civil war. And this is not good for anybody. How do we fight this is, in my opinion, is everybody needs to stop being so angry at their neighbor and do what's right. Do good. Stop feeding the anger and step back and ignore those people. But those people come over there and they come over to your place and they want to cause you harm. You have a right to defend yourself. But if I end up being surrounded by SWAT teams with guns blazing and this, that, and the other, the idea of me raising my gun and in retaliation to them is just suicide. So I see a big, big, big problem because one side wants, each side thinks they're doing what's right. I don't know
I
what
don't
the
think you
answer
can.
is.
I don't think you can compare the United States really with the situation in Ireland and England because the United States is a melting pot, and you'll meet peoples of different cultures, etc. But in Ireland and England, these people coming in, there's going to be no debating with those fellows whatsoever. They are
They
there to
hate
do a
us.
job.
Well, yeah,
And
that's
we've got
true.
no Second Amendment here, and I think also it's going to play differently because it's virtually impossible to force vaccinate someone who possesses an AR-15.
Yeah,
We've
but
got nothing.
delicate. I mean, but here's the thing. If the chaos ensues on the streets of the United States and you have soldiers going around policing, who's to say that the government isn't going to start sending those same, because we've given them the power to do that. Now
Hmm.
we're going to have, instead of the thugs coming in, we're going to have, who knows, maybe 30 men going door to door,
Hmm.
ransacking or looking into every house. For those people that register their weapons, they already know where some of them are. For
Mm.
those of us, like I had a concealed carry permit, so obviously they're going to come looking for me because I'm on record as being, having that permit. But we have so many guns in this country. There's a lot of people who have never had a permit, and there's lots of guns that are never been registered. So it's going to be a different thing, but we are allowing military to go into the town to police up what the local governments aren't doing. We've set the stage. It all feeds into the exact same global plan. I
Mm.
hate to say it. That's why, you know, John O'Looney was talking about they're going to come in with another pandemic. I'm not so sure if that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be the digital ID that's going to
Mm.
come in. And once the digital ID is there, it's going to go into the digital currencies and all
Mm.
of these things, and they'll be able to monitor everybody. They're going to say well, how are we going to know the difference between a UK citizen and an illegal immigrant if the UK citizens aren't willing to get the digital ID? No, it's just being used as a way to get the people to comply.
Yeah, of
And
course.
then
I
what
think
happens? And
I
then what
think
happens?
the infrastructure they're building over here for vaccines, they're building massive vaccine plants across Europe. They wouldn't make that kind of investment unless they were going to use them.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
somebody's going to have to implement this so-called mark, right? So
Mm.
this
Yeah,
digital thing that you will not
100%.
be able to hide from. You will be forced to get it, or you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade. I mean, it just all fits into the book of Revelations, in my opinion. And we're
Yes.
not going to stop this, unfortunately, until there's the great reckoning, and that's at the end of the book, which I believe good wins. I believe God wins, and the Satanists will all be destroyed. But it won't be by
Yes.
man; it'll be by God.
Yes. Yeah, we've just got to stay on the path, and unfortunately, we're all nations. We enjoy our creature comforts, don't we? You know, comfortable duvet and a telly and PC and internet access, and I think it's going to be a very hard journey for some of us to make, but it's one that I'm determined to make because I'm not going to take the mark of the beast.
Well, we have laid out the past and the present and indeed the future. I'd like to wrap it up by asking everybody, what do they think that they themselves, are they in a small group, or are they as best they can in a larger group? What should they be doing at this stage to sort of prepare as best they can for what is coming down the pike? We'll go, Edna, let's start with you. What's your thoughts? You've heard these other three men now lay out the future. What do you think should be the path forward as best we can?
Taking advice from people that have given me good advice over the last while, and I'm keeping a bit of silver. um, I'm I'm trying to look after a few people that I know that haven't been well, and I'm trying to show them what I've done to keep myself well. I'm giving a few people advice that come my direction that want to hear what I have to say about how I've gotten well, and I'm trying to simplify my life a little bit, and just kind of preparing around my, my direct environment to keep things as simple as possible. And keeping a good few friends around me that are also in the same mind space as me going forward.
So you're doing your best to build a small group of cohort of friends and people. Tell me this, you've been the past 3 to 4 to 5 years trying to do your best to spread this word. Do you find that the audience are opening up and more prone to listening to what you have to say? Are people coming a little bit more awake or more eager to
Oh,
listen?
yeah, I think, um, or I mean, at the beginning it was horrendous because I got an awful lot of abuse at the beginning. I got the vaccine industry got abuse from all sides, from all sides. We were the idiots at the beginning. We were the fools. We got everybody. We were the scapegoats from every side. From the people that were delighted with the vaccines. You know, we didn't get the second one or whatever. We weren't fully vaccinated. I only took one, so I wasn't fully, jabbed. So I was treated like as if I hadn't had any. You know, um, so what was Micheál Martin said. Um, it was the I can't remember the title that he gave us. It was pandemic. I can't remember the wording, but it was our fault, basically.
Yeah,
It was our
I
fault.
know.
So he blamed us, and then the people that didn't get vaccinated treated us like we were lepers, because we'd had one, or so we didn't fit in anywhere. We got dreadful abuse, absolutely dreadful, and we're still getting it. Like I said even today, I got abuse off somebody online. That like I was feeling sorry for myself when I'm trying to speak out. So it's been a hard road, a very very hard road. And
Most certainly.
even though there are times, so many times that I've said I can't do this anymore. I have to get away from these people because people are so negative. I can't do it for long because I do feel I have been given this job to do, so I have to
Yeah,
keep
but
going back in.
that's why he's picked you. That's why
Yeah,
the
I
man
know.
upstairs has picked you.
Yeah, I have a hard neck.
I'm
So I
telling
can't
you,
stay away
that's
for
exactly
long.
why. It's not for the
Yeah,
faint-hearted, is it?
no, it's not.
There
And
you go.
sometimes it makes me sick. I get so sick from it. It's not like it just annoys me. Stress makes me very, very, very ill.
Yeah,
So I
bless
sometimes,
you.
it nearly bloody kills me,
Mm.
So I go away and I'm so ill from it. But then I'm only away for a day or two, and I know I have to come back.
Yeah, of
I
course you
I
do.
have to,
Yeah.
So I go back in, and it's other people sometimes. It's not even that it's done to me. I see it been done to other people. And then I see the same people going, none of the vaccine ninjas speak out. Why aren't they here? It's because it's so bloody hard,
Yeah, of
Of
course.
course they're not speaking out, because when
Mm.
we go in, the abuse we get is just unreal,
Well, I
what
think we
we're
touched on it
called.
earlier about
Dreadful.
the sin of pride. I never understood the sin of pride before COVID. I always thought, well, you'd hear about the seven deadly sins, don't you? And it's, envy, lust, and whatever. And then there's pride. And I thought, well, how can it be a sin to be, I'm really proud of my nice motorbike. I spent a lot of time building that. Why shouldn't I be proud? It's not that. It's
Yeah,
taught me that it's easier to fool someone than get them to admit they've been fooled.
yeah,
That was the perfect thing. And I can tell you, nobody took that vaccine because they're stupid. They took it
yeah,
because they were frightened to death. They took it
yeah, yeah,
for me. They took it for me because they were told it would protect me. And they tried every
yeah,
trick in the book. Oh, you can't work, you can't travel. It's for him. You're doing it. You're selfish. You're dangerous. And
yeah,
and so I totally get why. And it's never been for me, us and them. I think
yeah,
it's about everyone coming together and saying we're not doing it anymore, and making that change. And hopefully that's what we're building. And the idea is one voice is not much, but that you inspire other people who then talk, and they can ban us from the internet. They can ban us from being able to do podcasts or things like this in the future. Doesn't matter. I'll be talking to people in the local shop, at the bus stop, in the streets and the fields, and we're never going to go away.
no,
And I think eventually it's like holding that football under the water. It's going to come to the surface. I'm pretty confident that we do prevail. It comes at great cost, but it already has.
yeah,
I'm pretty, and do I want to live to see it? Of course I do. But if I don't, I
yeah,
know I've been part of it. So I'm quite happy. I meet my maker with a clean conscience.
yeah, me
Over
too.
to over to you, John McGhee.
Same as that. I'm not one for hoarding or buying gold. What are you going to be able to do with a cupboard full of food when you're the last man alive? Who wants to be the last man alive? Or
Mm.
what are you going to shave a couple of little filings off your gold in exchange for a bag of spuds? I just don't see how that's feasible. So I'm just going to go with the flow and whatever, whenever I'm taken, so be it. But I'm definitely going to see it out until the bitter end.
Good
Thank you,
man.
John.
Welcome to
Over
the
to you,
fold.
Richard.
Well, I like what John McGhee just said. The Bible, I'm a big Bible person, speaks often about fear not. We're supposed to fear God, not man. Stop complying to the fear. I mean, they created the fear so that people would sit there and run out there and jump on this supposedly brand new vaccine that nobody ever wanted. In the book, don't early on, when in the beginning, when they were doing all the lockdowns, of course, I'm on my way to the funeral home, and the scripture came to my mind. There will be those who try to save their lives will lose it, but those who are willing to give up their lives will have gain. And if you think about it, for a lot of us, we've gained so much
Amen.
by not falling into that. Even Etna, look how much she's gained. All the suffering that she's done, look how much she's gained. So it's not about vaccine, unvaccinated. Stop the division. They want us divided. They want us fighting each other because that's what the devil does. He wants to come kill, steal, and destroy. And so stop the hatred. Stop it. Love God, love your enemy. So we need to seek truth. And in my belief is that if you seek truth, you will then find God, the spiritual thing that's behind all of this stuff. Be kind to one another. Store our treasures, kind of like with what John was saying. You know, I get it. There's a lot of people that have all this stuff, and maybe they're right and I'm wrong, and I'm going to be totally broke, and I'm going to be eating grass for, to keep myself alive. It doesn't matter. I'm going to whatever it is. But store treasures in heaven. That's a spiritual storing of heaven. And how do you do that? By being good to your neighbor, by doing what's right. And of course, we should always strive to do what's right. Nobody should be forcing other people what to do. The idea that we're going to vaccinate ourselves to save our neighbor is no different than me wearing a condom so that my neighbors 3 houses down don't get his wife pregnant. That's just about as stupid as I can think of. Nobody sits there and has an allergy to, say, peanut allergies, right? I'm definitely allergic to peanuts. You shouldn't. It's like me not eating a peanut butter sandwich because my brother who lives on the other side of town is allergic to peanuts. That's dumb. Dumb. Do what you feel like you've got to do. Stop trying to I mean, this whole complying. I mean, this whole digital ID is coming, whether you like it or not, and they're going to continue the division. Continue the division. Create an enemy. It's exactly what Hitler did. He created the Jews as the enemy. Oh my gosh. So, and the idea, I'm not a big person. I don't like the idea of blaming Jews for everything. It's no different than blaming every black man because a black man committed a crime over on this side of town. That means all black men are bad? No, we're all human beings. We're all created by the Creator. We're all human beings, and
Free will.
we have free will, and we should just strive to do what's right. Don't hold on to your life so much that you have to be willing to give up your life. My wife read an article just the other day. She was telling me about this man, 5 years, has finally come out of isolation because of the fear of COVID. 5 years. Now think about that. This man lived and secluded himself from his life for 5 years. And guess what? COVID's still around. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's mutated. It's done all these different things. But that man cannot get those 5 years of his life back. So by trying to save his life, he lost 5 years of interacting with society, and his immune system's probably down because if he's not out there a part of society, is letting his immune system slip. It's like, let's play in the dirt. Let's get dirty. Let's get out there and exercise our immune systems by exposing ourselves to these different pathogens in the world. Now, unfortunately, the vaccine has destroyed a lot of people's immune systems, and that's going to make it really hard for those that have a damaged immune system. But I don't know how we're going to get out of this unless we rebuild that immune system, and we don't do it by hiding. So I think we should just love one another, do what's right, seek the truth, and move forward.
Well, before the COVID was introduced and the first cases were diagnosed here in the United States, we had about 2 months of a fear campaign with people, videos from the Asian continent with people just keeling over and gyrating on the streets. And that was really to soften us up and put the fear of God into everybody. And the result of that was in the extreme case that you mentioned there now, that a fellow was so scared that he kept secluded in his own home for 5 years. But we have some suggestions there as to what we should do going forward. Edna was saying that try to, on a one-to-one basis, help out individually, and John O'Looney was saying similar, but on a bigger scale. And John McGhee there mentioned that perhaps in the end of the day, the most important thing to secure would be the basic foodstuffs, even if you can only feed your own household and neighbors, at least to try to do something, that being the most and the basic thing. He said, forget about the gold and silver. Well, some guys like a bit of gold and silver as well, but more they are not, at the end of the day, the basic food stuff and the basics of life, such as food and accommodation, is paramount. And then Richard, of course, would say that what will help him going forward is his spiritual belief, and that will gain him a strength as well. And that is fantastic. And that is as best we can do with regards to this 1 hour and 45 minutes. But we'll, if anybody now wants to touch on any other subject there, we'll have a sort of a free for all, and anybody can say this, that, and the other. We don't want to just cut it off. We'll give everybody an opportunity if there's something on their mind that we didn't get to or whatever, you can feel free to have a little bit of a chat among ourselves. And Richard, then, when he decides that we've exhausted ourselves, he can call it a day. And thank you to Richard for setting up, and hopefully this recording comes out okay, and etc. etc.
Well, I think
That
John
was nice
McGhee's-
what Richard said there. Sorry, I'm cutting it off you. It was nice what Richard said there. And before we started recording, it was a conversation we had earlier about faith and the fact that a lot of us were saying that faith is very strong and that it's a spiritual war at the moment. A lot of us are feeling that good versus evil. And my faith has certainly become very, very strong through all of this. And I have felt that that I've been given a job to do through all of this, and that it wasn't just that me putting my arm out, that it felt that it was meant to be nearly, and that I did feel God on my side, that I got through all this, and as Richard and myself have said before, all roads have led to here. And I've made some really good friends through this, and 4 of them are looking at me on my phone at the moment.
Thank you.
I feel very lucky to have met the 4 of you.
Us four here refer to ourselves as the 3 wise men. The 3 wise men. That's what us 4 are.
3 of us on this call are morticians, undertakers. And I think the other 2, the 2 Johns would agree. We see death on a regular basis. It's just a normal thing. Like, I got a phone call a little bit ago. I'm going to be going to work again because somebody else has died. We can tell you that when the person has died and they're laying there on the table before us, there's no more suffering. There's no more pain. And we also can tell you none of us will escape death. And I think if people would realize that, and that's what a lot of people think they're invincible and that they're going to live forever. That's just not the truth. We see death every day. It's a part of our life. It's what we do. We take care of the dead. And so we can see that there is no more suffering. When the person dies, there's no more suffering. The suffering is over. So try not to fear death itself. Fear what the spirit's going to go. Where's your spirit going to go? Are you going to go to a place that's going to be a blissful place, like in eternity in heaven? So I believe. Or are you going to go into a place of torment, which would be hell, which is where the evil one would be? Or if you're not a believer, either way, one way or the other, you're going to be into nothing. You're just going to disappear. Either way, no matter how you look at it, when you die, you die. There are things worse than death, and that is drawn out suffering. And even though, like, look at Etna and her testimony and all of the suffering that she's gone through, her testimony has touched no telling how many people in this world. And she probably don't even know a portion of the people that she's touched, because I believe that God has used her as well as the rest of us to reach out to other people and give a little bit of hope. That's why I believe this is a spiritual war more than it is a physical war. This physical flesh and blood is going to go into the ground or be cremated and turned into dust. But the spirit, that thing that makes you you, that thing that you can't put your finger on it, is going to go somewhere. Either into a good place, a bad place, or somewhere into nothing. I want to go to a good place. And so I put my trust in God, and I hope that people will do the same.
Amen.
Yeah,
This
amen.
job should make you spiritual after all our years at it. You know, you've learned nothing from it if it hasn't developed that side of you.
It's true.
Yeah.
You know, the majority of the people I've met, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the people that have become more and more awake have become more and more awake to the spiritual aspect of this is a war between good and evil.
Yeah,
Yes.
big time. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. I think as a former engineer, I see polar opposites in all things, be that left and right, up and down, black and white, whatever it be. And, you know, it's very clear that we live under a great evil. I don't think that's even up for discussion. We can see that. And we're connected enough well into the system to know. But where there is a great evil, there must be the polar opposite. There must be a force for good. Who is that? Is that God? Is that us? I really don't know. But even if there were no God and there were no heaven, I wouldn't have taken any different action. I would have still stood up and shouted the alarm, because that's what you fundamentally do as a decent human being. So I'll keep treading the path because I know that path is in the light. And I'll meet my maker with a clean conscience. I almost can't wait.
Good. Good.
Okay, I guess that's it, Richard, if you're happy with that.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and end this recording now. For all those people that listen outside of this, we wish you the well.
You all.
We certainly
God
do.
bless you.
God bless. Take it easy.